Terence Crawford's trainer, BoMac McIntyre, didn't bother with the usual hedging that cushions big fight talk. He stripped the matchup to its bones. Size, he said, won't save you. Not when the other man is Crawford. Not when the real fight is decided by timing, nerve, and a brain that solves you while you're still finding your range. The pushback was immediate. The same refrain that circled this fight since it was a rumor. What about the weight? Canelo. Álvarez is built for the high country. Crawford climbed here. BoMac barely blinked. Bud has been dealing with bigger men his whole life, he said, and not once has the tape shown him overwhelmed by bulk. You don't beat Crawford with mass. You beat him by outthinking him, outtiming him, outlasting him. And that, in this camp's mind, is where the hill gets steep for the king at 168. There was a hard, almost workmanlike certainty in BoMac's voice, the sound of a coach who's spent decades filing off rough edges until a fighter's tools fit, like a key in a lock. Head movement, that's what coaches are for. Strength, that's what nutritionists and scientists calibrate. Power, manage it for 36 minutes and the weight on the other side stops feeling like a mountain and starts feeling like a task. The message wasn't swagger, it was a thesis. This isn't a bench press contest, it's a chess match where every move hurts. Beyond the dais, the rumor mill hummed. Word leaked that Canelo had been working rounds with Jaron "Boots" Ennis, the welterweight wolf whose fast feet, sharp counters, and slick exits look, at least in the right light, like a composite sketch of Crawford. If Canelo found those, looks tricky in a gym, what happens under lights that count? BoMac swatted the logic away like a jab he'd seen 1,000 times. Boots is special, he admitted by implication, but Boots ain't Bud. Sparring is a lab. Championship rounds are courtrooms. Nothing you do with headgear becomes evidence when the bell says the truth out loud. Old footage tried to weld itself to the present. Clips resurfaced of Floyd Mayweather and Crawford posted up at a Shakur Stevenson spar. Whispers turned into declarations that Floyd had joined Team Bud's think tank. The reality was duller and more useful. Mayweather's public stance hasn't changed. Crawford is the best alive, but the fight will be won by the men who touch gloves, not the ghost of a decade-old masterclass. Advice is oxygen. Execution is fire. Still, the cautions kept coming from the rational corner of the room. Adi Oladipo voiced what everyone could see with their own eyes. Crawford, once wiry and knife-thin at 135 and 140, now looks carved from heavier wood. Bigger. Back, thicker shoulders, legs like anchors. North of 170, easy. It's the cost of admission to Canelo's neighborhood, but does it tax the very gifts, fluidity, timing, sharpness, that make Crawford deadly? Fighters who chase mass risk dragging their speed just enough to slip from early to late, from first to second. And Canelo is not a man you can be second against for long. He's absorbed Golovkin's detonations, braced for Kovalev's leverage, seen every kind of hard shot before breakfast. You don't bluff that chin with a few extra pounds on the bar. You beat it with the shot it never saw, the one that rides, in on rhythm and leaves on silence. That's the counter-argument that never quite leaves the conversation. Physics. There are weight classes for a reason. Canelo has lived at the top of his for years, walked the distance with every dialect of danger, slick boxers, pressure cookers, jab clinics, trench brawls, and come out with an aura that can't be counterfeited. Experience is its own kind of power. It slows your pulse when the room closes in. It shows you the trap 3 steps sooner. It takes a fight that's trying to sprint and makes it a walk to the deep water Canelo loves. But the other side has its receipts too. Breadman Edwards, who talks like a man who's cornered before and sees the board as it is, reminded anyone listening that respect isn't the same as fear. Yes, Crawford knows Boots is the real deal. He's been told as much by Shakur Stevenson, by Red Spikes, by BoMac, by anyone who's watched the kid grow teeth. That knowledge doesn't shrink a fighter like Bud, it sharpens him. If Canelo is seeing a certain look in camp, the look will meet a refined answer on fight night. That's where Crawford has lived for a decade, in the in-betweens of a fight, turning tendencies into traps, traps into turning points. He doesn't need you to make a mistake. He builds one for you and convinces you it was your idea. Still, the size chorus won't shut up, and there's good reason. Some fighters, even great ones, find their ceiling when they try to cross a bridge. Too far. Bud began at lightweight. Canelo's chin has been living at super middleweight and beyond. The skeptic's math is simple. At some point, nature collects. If Canelo's right hand lands with the kind of leverage it's carried since he was a teenager selling out arenas, will Crawford's brilliant head and hands be enough to keep the light steady? There's an answer to that question, but it doesn't exist in a highlight reel or a split screen of old fights. It lives in the rhythm of 12 rounds, and the only way to hear it is to get there. Experience, too, has a shadow side. The version of Canelo who bullied Callum Smith's arms numb, who walked Golovkin into the echo of his own jab, who cut rings down to claustrophobia. He shows up most violently for super fights. But the numbers don't always sing anymore. There are nights where his output dips, where the patience looks like drift, where the feet don't close distance as cleanly as they used to. Was Bivol an ill-fated expedition one division too cold? Or was it a snapshot of erosion that even kings can't outrun? That's not an accusation. It's a context. Champions earn the right to write their own endings. They also invite the question of whether they know when to punctuate the sentence. The conflicted voices in the sport have a point that sounds like love. This fight, they say, is both a coronation and a trap. They admire Crawford for chasing the kind of greatness that's heavy to carry, then ask whether this opponent, a naturally bigger man whose resume glows under stadium lights, is the best vehicle for legacy. On another road, Bud might take different scalps, stay closer to the weight where his dynamite detonates most violently, let the pound-for-pound argument calcify without asking physics to co-sign. But that's not how the truly great think. They don't want consensus. They want proof. They're willing to bet that skill can bend reality long enough to make a night feel like forever. BoMac frames it the only way he knows how, as a battle of intellect disguised as a fight. He talks about timing as a solvent that loosens the bolts on power. He talks about speed not as sprinting, but as decision-making. Who gets from read to reaction first? Who sees the second beat inside the first? He talks about defense with a reverence that tells you where their hours go. Catch and shoots, shoulder rolls, the quiet violence of smothering right when a punch is about to grow teeth. He talks about science like a mechanic talks about torque. The labs, the blood draws, the nutrition that lets a smaller man carry new weight without breaking his own rhythm. And then he says the thing that is both cliche and gospel in this game. Skills pay the bills. It's not a bumper sticker in this camp. It's an accounting ledger they've balanced for more than a decade. Across from all of this certainty stands Canelo, a champion whose composure is the product of long nights in harder rooms than most fighters ever see. He's fought the clever, the cruel, the fast, the long, and figured out enough of each to stay near the top of every conversation that matters. The Canelo faithful point to that bank of pain and poise and ask a fair question. If Bud wins, can he keep Canelo's respect? Long enough to do it twice? Because that's the part of greatness we forget. One night crowns you, the calendar tests you, so we're left with a riddle that only two men can solve. Can perfect timing carve through perfect force? Let us in the comments below.